Hello, class. This week we're going to talk a little bit about Bootstrap. It's a great framework for developing responsive websites, and it builds out a lot of the CSS that you'll need. So, needless to say, there are a lot of CSS classes and many choices for doing things that you may want to do, and maybe even some things you haven't even thought about doing that you can do with CSS and Bootstrap. So before we get into it too far, what we're going to do today is we're going to build a responsive website using Bootstrap, and we're going to put a few sections in. We're going to put a few tables in each of the sections, and we're going to show how the page becomes responsive when I maximize and minimize the widths of the screen to follow the different breakpoints that we'll encounter. So before we do that, though, the most important place to go when you're working with Bootstrap is Bootstrap or getbootstrap.com. It has going right to the read the docs section. It has a great online documentation of how you can follow through and try things out. It has a lot of great information. Like I said, there are so many different options in here. It talks about breakpoints, and you can see the different sizes for breakpoints. And we'll be experimenting with some of these. But you can see as we go through it, there's different variables and media query. Everything that we've talked before is in here, just a lot more detail. It talks about containers, different container sizes, and you can prefix or you suffix each one of these with the small, medium, large, extra large, extra large, and fluid. Fluid is always 100% wide, regardless of the screen size. So you have lots of options, lots of things to try. And if you're not sure what you want to do, you can just type it into the search engine and type navbar, for example. That's the first thing we're going to start with. And it gives you a whole section on navbar and different content and different things you could set up. And yeah, there's a lot of classes in here, and it's a little bit harder to read. But I think once you try it out for a little bit and get used to it, it's not so bad. So this is in our resources section in the contents. So take a look at this, bookmark it, and use it. It also shows how we can link to the latest release. The latest release of Bootstrap by using these link commands here. So we don't have to download it to our web service if we don't want to. We can. And there's pros and cons of each, which we're not going to really go into here. But if you wanted to always have the latest version of Bootstrap, here is kind of how you would do it. And we're going to kind of follow along those pages. So what I've already gone ahead and done is I've reset our lab to the lab template. And we have our good old hello world. And we have our web page in the separate window saying good old hello world. And so what I want to do is I want to build out a nav bar. I want to start by, before we do that even, I want to start out by building the template. The template on what we're going to use to build out our Bootstrap website. And I'm not going to type all the code directly. I'm going to copy and paste it because I've already typed it once. And you could see, it formats it nicely for us too. You could see here's our first very basic setup of a Bootstrap web page. Actually, it's not even Bootstrap yet. It just has the viewport, which is required. So we absolutely need this one line of code in there to get Bootstrap to work properly for us. Okay, so let's now build in our Bootstrap CSS. So we need that link we were talking about. So we're going to copy the code. We can use it from here. We can take this version and copy the whole line over. Copy. We'll put it right after the meta. We'll put it in here. And now we have our CSS. And notice how the font changed a little bit. So we're already into CSS and already into Bootstrap a little bit kicking in. If we decide to shrink the size of the page a little bit, see how the text kind of shrinks a little bit up to a certain point. So that's kind of working well for us. Good. Next thing we want to do is include our JavaScript. And again, we can go back into over here, and this is the JavaScript line. And we'll put the JavaScript right above the end of the body statement in our web page down here. So now we have our JavaScript in there in case we need to do some JavaScript functions. So we have all that in there, and the page still looks exactly the same. So this would be your basic template on setting up a Bootstrap web page. You've got your Bootstrap, you've got your viewport, and you've got your JavaScript all set up and ready to go. So the first thing we want to add is a navigation bar. Now, again, I have all this text code typed in, so I'm not going to type it a second time. I'm just going to copy and paste, and I will post all this code when we're done for you to look at. So we have our header, we have our heading. We can post this, and we can replace the My First Bootstrap website. We don't need that anymore. Let's post the nav bar right on top. And as the page renders, there's our web page. Let's look at it on the full page. We have My Site on the left. We have 3 sections: Home, About, and Contact. Let's take a look at that in the code. So we have, here in our code, we have our nav bar and all the options. I'll go over what those mean in a second. We have our hamburger icon, the toggler button. You've seen that. I'll show it to you in a second. When it gets below a certain size. So we're using expand large. So if it goes beyond large, and we saw what the large sizes were over here, if we go to containers, right? Once we drop below this 960-ish pixels, we're going to collapse to the hamburger icon. So let's take a look at that. Should be getting there shortly. Oh, and there it goes. See how it switched to the hamburger icon where everything expands? So we want it responsive. If we wanted to change it to, instead of large, we wanted to use medium, we could just take this LG and turn it to MD. And when the page renders, still looks exactly the same. But now, when I scroll over, you can see it's shrinking. It's going a little further this time. Up, and there it goes now. So you can adjust the responsiveness and the container size. Okay, so looking at our code a little further, we have there are different classes, and we can list multiple classes to be executed at the same time, meaning multiple types of CSS being brought in and calculated for us. So for example, on this navbar class here on line 14, we have navbar expand MD, navbar dark, and BG dark. Now, I don't expect you to remember what all those mean right off the bat, and you can certainly look them up in the reference. But in the short answer is the navbar is telling Bootstrap that we're going to have a navigation bar. The expand LG tells it when it's going to compress from the full size navigation bar to the hamburger icon, which is based on the LG, the size, the breakpoint that we picked. The navbar dark is telling us to use a light colored text on a dark background. And the background dark is telling us to apply a gray-black background. So usually those two go together, light text and a dark background. So we have here our hamburger icon, and there's a lot of classes in here and a lot of rules for it. And you can look up the button class to see all the different things you want on here, which is cool. And then we have our links. And here's the links we saw: home, about, and contact, right? Home, about, and contact. So there's our 3 links. Now, this is kind of interesting, but let's make it a little more personal. Let's see if we can put an image in here instead of just my site. Maybe we'll try to change it up a little bit and call it something else. Instead of calling it my site, why don't we call it Camp Farms? As you may or may not know, I do a lot of gardening, and I have a lot of chickens, so I'm kind of living on a farm, if you want to think of it like that. So we'll call it Champ Farms is the name of our website. Let's see if we can put an image in here now. Okay, so I'm going to take the image, and I'm going to put it underneath the nav bar, because that's kind of where I want to put it. We could argue that we may want to put it inside the nav bar and have a bigger nav bar, but that's not what I want to do. I want to put it here. So there it is. I put my image in, and it says responsive header image. So it didn't really have an image. It's got this placeholder URL. It has the class for a fluid image with a rounded corners and the alternate text. So let's put in here the name of a file. But before I can do that, I have to upload it to our little server here. Oops, that's the upload button. And let me get to my desktop. And here's the picture here. And we'll put that picture right here. Forms.png. Give it a second to re-render. And there it is. Let's look at it at the bigger page. All right, so we have a title, we have some links, we have an image, we have some chickens, we have a garden, we have a little dog in here in the background. Kind of neat. It's all responsive, everything collapses nicely, adjusts properly. It's looking good so far. So what can we do next? Well, we can collapse this because we don't need that anymore. Well, I think the next thing we want to do is add some sections, right? So we've got all these different sections created, but there's nothing in it. So when we try to navigate to each section, it doesn't do anything. Well, it is doing something, but there's nothing for it to do. So let's build some sections out. We can also add a header to the page as well. Instead of just having a picture on top, maybe we want to put a little welcome message in there. So I have some header text. We can copy over this, and we can put it in place. In here, we'll put it above the picture. We have a container. It's a display for. So what does display for mean? Well, we should probably think about what some of these dash number things mean. We'll get to that in a minute. We also have PY5. But you can see it put a nice little title over here on this side, and the picture is kind of over here in the middle. So it's kind of unaligned, but okay for now. It works. It's good enough. We can certainly adjust things as needed when the time comes. Well, let's look at what does this mean? Display dash. Let's take a look at the directions and see what it says. Display dash. Display property. And it gives you a nice explanation about all the different display pieces mean. And what this is really saying is display 4. I'll try changing it to display 8 now and just show you the difference. So it's changing the way it looks. So as we change the display dash number, it changes the font size of what's being displayed. So you can display smaller or bigger text. So we went with display 4. If we just go with display 8, we did one thing. Let's do display 12 and see what that shows. Different value, display, oh, no, not 22, just display 2, bigger size. So you can adjust this as necessary to have your different display sizes. We'll stick with display 4 for now. So now let's go ahead and add those sections I was talking about a minute ago. So we have 3 sections. We have one for home, we have one for about, and one for contact. So we'll have 3 containers. And again, I'm gonna copy and paste some code over, and I'm going to put it here. And when the page re-renders, we have a home, we have an about, we have a contact, we have 3 sections where we could add different text or images or information, whatever we want. We have, you could see that this middle one, about, is a little, oops, I just closed the wrong window. Hold on a second, I'm going to pause this and get that back. Okay, I'm back, sorry about that. So I have our code back the way we had it. I'll just take a look over here so you could see it. And we were talking about this about section, how it was a little bit different in color. And you could see where we had the sections, we had this one class for about has background light, BG light, and PY5. Well, BG light, I think we know what that means. It's a light background. But what does P5 mean? PY5. PY5 means it's adding some padding to the top and bottom. So vertical padding, and the value is 5. So it's putting a little bit of padding around our sections. So the PYs, and there's a whole bunch of other ones too that you could look up. See if we could find them real quick. And we go to padding. And you could see the P's, the values, you could see the different spaces you can get for each one of these. The P, and here's the Y. So you can get a real good idea of how much space you want to put in here. Lots of options, lots of different options in Bootstrap and CSS to tinker with. Not really possible to learn all of these in one class or 1 week or even one semester. It's just a lot. So best is to just start tinkering, get a feel for what it does, like we're doing today, and try adding some things and take a look around and see what other websites are doing and inspect their code and see what they're doing, get some ideas. Okay, that being said, we have our 3 containers built and they're looking good. Let's test the resizing to see if they resize properly. And it looks like the text is changing a little bit. It kind of did. So that's good. And what do we want to do next? Well, we could put a footer in. Let's put a footer in. We got a header. Might as well have a footer. And we could put that right here at the bottom. And now when the web page renders, we have this little footer down here. It looks a little kind of professional. You got your top nav bar, you got your bottom nav bar. Looks pretty slick. And it's only a little bit of code that we put in here. It's only 86 lines of code to do all this. Not so bad. True, there's not a lot of content in here, and we can work on adding some content sections and see how that looks. And again, I will put this on our website for you to review. Along with a document explaining what the classes in here that I used are and how they work. But again, there's just so many different options. This is the way to go in here, is to take a look at the different options. If you really wanted to go through it, there's some great online tutorials as well that you can follow along with and try some Bootstrap programming. So I just loaded up another page that I've used before. It's got some great information here. Bootstrap tutorial from Tutorial Republic. Lots of information, kind of broken down in a different way about how you might want to do things. Maybe you want to do a table or a list or some buttons. Let's take a look at buttons real quick. Gives you different ideas of what buttons can look like with the different classes. So it's got some great information and great live examples too. So you can get some ideas of what you want to do. Another great website to bookmark. I would definitely keep this one. And plus, search around for your own. There's so many websites out there with great tutorials. Find one that meets your learning needs if you really want to get into website development. Okay, back to our website. Where were we at? We wanted to add some tables now. Let's add some tables into our sections to give it a little bit more content. Okay, so I'm going to add a extremely generic table to the About section. So we're going to replace the current About section with this code here. And let me find that About section, About, here it is. And we're going to replace that with this code here. And it looks really funky. So what we're doing here is we're creating a table in a container. We have the PY5, we got the BG light again, so that hasn't changed. And this is an example of a Bootstrap style table with different column widths. And here are the widths here, W10, 25, 15, 20, 10, 20. Our column headings 1 through 6. And then in each table row, we're listing row 1, column 1, row 2, column 1, etc., etc. Like I said, it's a very generic table. And you can use this to populate whatever data you want to populate. But how it looks like in the website, as soon as it re-renders, did it re-render? There it is. So you can see here's our table. Column headings, we have our rows and columns. Some are a little bigger, some are a little smaller. Let's see if it's responsive. It should be. And you could see it kind of shrinking and compressing, shrinking and compressing. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. So it's, like I said, very, very generic, but you can certainly populate this with whatever data you want it to populate, and it works fairly well. And again, I will post all these definitions and all these different table classes here, or Bootstrap classes as well, but there's nothing really new in this one. And I guess probably the last thing I want to do is show you what a fluid container looks like. And we'll replace the home section with this fluid container. And this is going to be a little more exciting, a little more eye-popping. Oops. Allow. I hope that pasted the right thing. I think it did. Okay, good. There. So that's a better looking table. It's got some colors in it. It's got some borders and some shading. It is super responsive. You can see how the table sides are staying relative to each other and shrinking. Oh, and then it collapses when it gets to that break point for small columns. So that's pretty slick. So you can put all sorts of great content in there. And if we look at the code for that, it tells you the number of columns. So Bootstrap lays out the page in 12 columns, and you can organize them in a container in any way you want and tell it how many columns wide you want it to be. In this case, we want it to be a small breakpoint with three columns, small breakpoint with 6 columns, small breakpoint with 3 columns. So there's your 12 columns, and it keeps everything lined up and relative to the size of the page. Now, if we briefly go back over to the textbook and we scroll down a little bit, we'll see they mention this as well. And here is another example of the different columns. And maybe we can put this into a different section just for comparison, so you have something to compare it to the textbook. So why don't we do that? Let's see if I can copy this code. I'll take this div class and scroll down and grab the whole thing and see if we can put it into, which container haven't we touched yet? We touched home and about, we haven't touched contact. So let's mess around with contact. So here's our contact container. We're going to leave everything else, and let's see if we can just do a quick copy paste and see if that does the job for us. We'll go back over here, and hey, sure enough it did. It doesn't have the borders and the shading, but that's okay. We can see it has the different layouts like it did in the textbook. And is it responsive? It sure enough is. Everything's collapsing as it should. Kind of looks weird like that. We probably should add some borders and shading to make it more readable. But that's a design decision. When you get to your requirements of your project, that's kind of something you might want to take into account. So you could see how we can break the page up into different columns, kind of like we did with that 3, 6, 3 example. We took these first 3, then the middle 6, then the next 3, and you can break them up in any order you want. And as the page resizes, it keeps it relative to the width of the page. So if you have a 4 and an 8, it'll always be a 1-2 ratio, for example. Okay, so that in a nutshell is Bootstrap websites. There are so many different examples to try. Please go through and try some of these. There are so many great examples in here. This probably be a good website to reference when we're getting to our final project coming up. So if you wanted to add some of these elements to your web page. But I'll worry about that later. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll leave this for you to copy and paste and tinker with. There is a lab assignment this week. It will be posted by the time you're seeing this video. It's not a hard lab assignment, but still, I want you to be able to write this web page. It's only about 100 and almost 200 lines of code. But I want you to make changes to it. So I'll have the code up there for you to start with, and I'll describe what kind of changes I want made to it for your lab. I'm not going to give you the code to do it. I'll give you the thoughts I have. Okay, that's it for now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll see you in the next one.